All right, welcome to our February 9th, 2023 City Council meeting. In the interest of time and efficiency and ensuring that everyone who wishes to address the council is given the opportunity to do so, the following will apply to all comments made by the public. Each speaker shall be allotted 3 minutes to address the council unless time is extended by the mayor or questions from the city council. Groups shall designate a spokesperson to avoid repetition of comments. Every effort will be made to avoid interrupting speakers. Thank you for your participation in your city government. With that, I'll call this meeting to order. I don't think we have the pastor here tonight, so if you will just please stand with me. We'll have a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, please join me in the pledge. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we'll have a presentation for the Employee of the Month. For the presentation of Employee of the Month, please welcome Jason Miller and Carrie Hablin.
All righty. Hello, everybody. This is such an honor to be here to celebrate Lieutenant Garbade. Can you come up? She exemplifies excellence in all she does. I would like to say how thankful I am to have her as a lieutenant, mentor, and most of all, friend. I could go on about her leadership, inspiration, and tenacity. I could also go on about her proactive and forward thinking in leadership, but don't take my word for it. Hear it from others she's inspired. Jonathan Hart and Kayla Shoemaker, come up.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Jonathan Hart. I'm a Lieutenant Garbade's firefighter from Station 32 on A shift. I've been asked to say a few words on behalf of Lieutenant Garbade, but I don't think we really have enough time in the evening for what I would want to say about her. All good things, that being said. I may have only known Lieutenant Garbade for 2.5 years since I got hired with the city. She's been one of the most impactful people in my career so far. My very long career I've had so far. She's lit a fire underneath me, motivating me to be a better firefighter every shift, every day. She makes me a better person. I don't think I just speak for myself. I know the whole crew at 32A feels the exact same, the way that she treats all of us, the way she makes us to be better. She's the most motivating leader, firm but fair and loving. The work she's done with getting the cadet program up and running, it's been incredible to watch it in my 2.5 years. She's selfless in everything she does. She's the most deserving employee of the month, employee every day, in my opinion. She deserves all the recognition and love. She shows Station 32A and her cadets what it's like to be an amazing leader. We're forever grateful for Lieutenant Garbade. Thank you for all you do for the citizens of St. Cloud, the fire department, your incredible cadet program. So congrats, LT. I speak for all of us. We love you, and thanks for being you.
Good evening, everyone. I want to first start off with a huge thanks to everyone who gave me the honor of being here and being able to present this speech today. My name is Kayla Shoemaker, and I am one of the original cadets to be a part of the cadet program when Cadet Post 1912 was first created in 2019. I have had the honor of knowing Lieutenant Garbade for the past 5 years. I have been a part of this program. On behalf of the cadets, it's safe to say that she's made a positive impact on all of us. Lieutenant Garbade is the type of leader to always set her cadets up and firefighters for success. And it is not a surprise to me and the rest of the cadets that she's being rewarded today because of all the hard work that she has put in on and off duty, not only for our cadet program, but for her department and for her community as well. She exemplifies a work ethic and persistence to accomplish any task, and these are traits that set the example for young leaders like us to learn firsthand. And on behalf of the cadets, we want to thank you and congratulate you, as this is well deserved for you being recognized as Employee of the Month. Thank you.
Mine's going to be shorter than everybody else's for once. I can't follow that up with anything other than to say that she's great. From the day she got hired here, she's been a leader. I think a week after you started, I said, you're going to be a lieutenant here in the bare amount of time possible, and I expect her to fully be fire chief one day. So with that, it's well deserved. I got nothing else.
Just thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to do the best I can, and thank you for the city for all the opportunities for the cadet program. We appreciate it.
Jeez. That doesn't happen. At least unlike some of us, you won't make the picture worse. Put your light on. You want to do the update first?
So I did forget a few things. I apologize. First thing, if Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Blackwell. Deputy Mayor Urban.
Here.
Councilmember Matheny.
Here.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Here.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Here.
All right, and Ms. Miller, do we have any updates to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to, on the consent agenda, pull items G and O.
For separate votes?
No, off the agenda.
All right, items G and O will be pulled off of the consent agenda for this meeting. All right. That'll bring us to the Citizens Forum. Any person who desires to comment on any item that is not on this agenda is provided this opportunity to address the City Council. Each person is requested to complete the sign-in form and be provided to the presiding officer, or as soon as practical thereafter, the person addresses the council. So first, we have, is it Victoria Shirley? Veronica Shirley Hood.
I'm here today to object to what the city is doing. You probably are not all aware, but they're making us, I belong to the senior size class, exercise class on Indiana, the old building over there. We meet every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to do exercise from 8 to 9. They're taking that building away from us, and they're making us get another location in order to exercise. Well, that building was donated a long time ago for use of senior citizens, not for the food pantry. The food pantry needs a bigger spot than that anyway. And I'm here objecting to it. I don't know if you all know that they are throwing us out of that building. They say, oh, well, you could go over to the one on 17th at 7:15 in the morning. Well, we've been going for over 20 years. I've been going myself for over 20 years at that location there from 8 to 9. That's our time. And they say, no, we don't have any spot for you any other place. Go over there and you're going to take it at 7:15 in the morning. It's ridiculous because I have to get up and do the horses and everything. And I don't think we should move. That property was donated for use by senior citizens, not for the food pantry, but for us. There's sewing clubs. There's a lot of clubs that meet there, And I object to the city allowing that property to go for the food pantry rather than keeping it for use of the senior citizens. And I've been going there, like I said, since I retired in 2004. And I think it's ridiculous for you all to allow this to go on instead of finding another place for the food pantry that's practical.
Thank you. City Manager, you had your light on. Did you have something to say?
Yes, thank you. Staff was given direction from the city council a little while ago to find a new location for the food pantry because as we're working on the electric site, food pantry has to find a new place to go. Staff did look at private locations and was unable to find a location that was willing to accept the food pantry that didn't already have conflicts with their other tenants. Staff has been looking at all city facilities, and this is right now at the top of our list because it has the access that the food pantry needs, and we are working through that. Our Parks and Recreation Department did talk to the leaseholder to give them a courtesy that, we are thinking about this and we're working towards it. But right now it is, I think, the only property that the city owns that would meet the needs of a food pantry. And we would be returning back to the city council if we work out an agreement with the food pantry.
Okay. Councilmember Gilbert.
Yeah, my one question is this need to be indoors or outdoors? And can you explain a little bit more what you do? Because we definitely want to accommodate
We exercise for
you.
1 hour. We exercise a program designed by the federal government when it started. I mean, I'm just a member, and I've just been going since 2004. And we do the same exercises every day for every part of your body.
Okay. I apologize.
like-
Is this needed to be
We have
indoors or
mats.
outdoors? Can we expand from the
Oh,
city
no.
and look at outdoor facilities? When it's at what time of during the day?
From 8 to 9.
Okay, and it's necessary to be indoors? It can't be outdoors?
Oh, no, you can't be out. We have a member that's 98 years old. No, you have to get up and down from a mat. Some of them have to use a chair in order to get down to their mat, and to get up from their mat, so they put a chair there so they can get up and down. I mean, we have like I said, we have one that's 98 years old. She's doing fantastic. Most of them are in the 80s, so
I was just looking for different alternatives, City
no
Manager.
outside.
Okay.
The
Thank you,
weather is
and
too changing.
Parks and Recreation is going to work with the leaseholder to find, the best solution that we can if we go further.
I mean, that property was donated to the city for use by senior citizens.
Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I'm sorry, what building are they in right now?
This is on Indiana Avenue next to the shuffleboard courts, the
small
the building right there.
Okay. And is there any possibility to, I know they were restricted to 7:15. Is there a reason it can't be 8 to 9 in the building off of 17th Street?
I don't know that they were restricted to 7:15. I
Yeah,
only know,
Yeah, there's another exercise that started way after us. Our exercise class has been going forever. Before I even joined, because I had to wait till I retired. But that type of exercise is designed for older people, to do. And the other class there, they have a class started at, they won't change it because their instructor is 17 years old and she has to go to work or school or something.
Is there a way to
We have
put them
to
in the
change it.
gymnasium?
We're the older ones. We've
well,
been
and
there.
we're going to
senior
work with the
citizens.
agreement
Thank you,
holder.
ma'am.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
try
Okay.
not to talk over each other.
I personally would like us to try to find a solution for it, if we could. And actually, one thing that popped into my mind, if we're unable to find something in the city, I mean, it seems like our gymnasium or something could accommodate, I don't know how many people are in this group, but
There's
one,
12, mostly 12. Sometimes there's
Thank you, ma'am.
15, but
one idea that popped in my head was the VFW. I know they work with community organizations. I mean, maybe that's something we could reach out to. I mean, I don't know, just trying to find a
good idea.
solution. But yeah, I mean, I personally would like to try to find them something, try to accommodate
I
it.
mean, 7:15
I
is
appreciate
ungodly.
Excuse me,
That you-
please don't,
Yeah.
we're just trying to keep a little bit of order here. But yes, I agree with Councilmember Matheny. I would like to find
we can
some
find
sort
something.
of solution
And
as
maybe
well.
reach out to the VFW if we're not able to work it out.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll definitely look
Well, it
into
doesn't look like
solutions.
you care that that building was donated for use of senior citizens then.
We definitely care.
We definitely
We
care.
definitely care.
Yes, we do.
I'm not
also-
aware of that, but I can look at if there's any restrictions associated with the donation for that building. I'm not
Thank
aware.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak in the citizens forum? If not, we will move on to the consent agenda portion. This next portion of tonight's meeting is the consent agenda, which contains items that have been determined to be routine and non-controversial. If anyone in the audience wishes to address a particular item on the consent agenda, now is the opportunity for you to do so. Additionally, if staff or members of the city council wish to speak on a consent item, they have the same opportunity. Does anybody on the council have any items they would like to discuss or vote separately? Councilmember Matheny.
I'd like to pull L for a separate vote.
Councilmember Matheny would like to pull L for a separate vote. And City Manager, you have your light on. Is there an item?
Yes, please. I'd like to clarify item N, like Nancy, the Stevens Plantation North Master Plan Condition of Approval. Furtick Road will be reviewed for compliance by Osceola County or St. Cloud, whoever has jurisdiction over that area. So just a clarification.
Okay. Does that need to be voted separately? Or?
No,
Okay.
that's just a clarification of the item.
All right. Anybody else? Would anybody in the public, in the audience, like to speak to a consent agenda item? If not, we will go to item L for a separate vote. Can I entertain discussion or a motion for item L?
I can't make the motion because unless I'm going to make
I
a motion.
motion.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gilbert. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gilbert and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Councilmember Gilbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
No. Councilmember Matheny, no.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Matheny. Deputy Mayor Urban,
Aye.
motion carries 3-1.
All right, so on the remainder of the consent agenda, do we have any discussion or motion from the council?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Matheny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fletcher,
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban,
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, that will bring us to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Madam Clerk, please read item 1 into the record.
Final public hearing for ordinance number 2023-02, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning the platted right-of-way located south of Betsy Ross Lane and Neptune Road, specifically described in the body of this ordinance, providing for suburbility, conflict, and effective date.
Good evening, Melissa Dunklin, Community Development Director.
Good evening.
This request before you is for a vacation of right-of-way for Neptune Elementary Parent Loop. The subject site is located south of Betsy Ross Lane and south of Neptune Road. The applicant is requesting the vacation and abandonment of an unimproved right-of-way platted as Medicine Street. Here's a graphic representation of the location of the requested vacation of the right-of-way. We routed this item for review, and we received no objections, and there were no utilities found in the right-of-way. This request meets the intent of the strategic plan goals for infrastructure and growth management. During the review of the request, the surveys revealed that the north area of the unimproved right-of-way proposed for vacation and abandonment, there was a portion of Betsy Ross Lane that was constructed on the school district's property. So you'll see at the end that we're recommending 2 conditions of approval. This shows the right-of-way to be dedicated and the sidewalk easement proposed to be provided. Staff and DRC reviewed this request and recommended approval. Likewise, it is requested that this council approve with the following conditions. Ordinance number 2023-02. The first condition is that the area that contains Betsy Ross Lane will be dedicated as right-of-way. And the second condition is that the area for the future sidewalk connection shall be dedicated as a public sidewalk easement. Okay. Staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. Great catch by staff for the sidewalk and the road construction, and I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Matheny, but I see that Councilmember Gilbert also has his light on.
Councilmember Matheny beat me to it with the sidewalk. That was a good move, but no, no other comment. She answered the question.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Gilbert. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
And Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 2 into the record?
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-01, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, providing for a zoning amendment of the zoning map of the Land Development Code of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, specifically changing the zoning designation of approximately 5.8 acres identified as personal mini storage, generally located east of Florida Turnpike, west of Old Canoe Creek Road, and south of Continental Street, from NB Neighborhood Business to HB Highway Business zoning designation, which remains consistent with the commercial future land use designation, providing for entering the designation on the official zoning map filing of the Planning Commission recommendation, and proof of publication, severability, and effective date.
Good evening, Melissa Dunklin again, Community Development Director. The request before you is for a zoning map amendment for personal mini storage. The existing future land use is commercial. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning from from neighborhood business to highway business. The development is compatible with the surrounding area, and there will be no adverse impacts on city facilities. Here you'll see the current future land use and zoning maps depicted. The request meets the intent of the strategic plan goal for growth management. On November 9th, city staff and DRC recommended approval, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval on January 17th. Likewise, it is requested that this council approve ordinance number 2023-01, and staff is available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this item? Hello.
Hello.
Please
Good
state
evening,
your name
Council.
and
Sean
address.
Hendel, Hanson Walter and Associates, 8 Broadway, Kissimmee, Florida. Representing the applicant, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Gilbert.
The question is that's what I'm understanding, this is going to be a U-Haul rental facility also, and that's why you're changing the zone in the code?
Yes, sir. So the staff determined that the U-Haul rental that had been there for the previous 7 years was in conflict with the code. So when you guys involuntarily annexed the property was developed in Osceola County. You guys involuntarily annexed it. However, the conditions in the approvals in Osceola County, they could not find anything that allowed for the U-Hauls. And your code in that zoning ordinance didn't allow for vehicles for rent, vehicles for hire. So the only way to remedy that situation is to rezone the property, and then we're going to come back to you with a conditional use for the U-Haul rental.
Okay, so it's kind of franchise U-Haul that they do U-Hauls in and out and things such as that. The only question I have is the parking allotment for that and if there's enough space.
Yes, sir, yeah, and that'll be on the conditional use site plan.
Okay.
So there's enough parking, there's parking within the site as well. It was on the site since they owned it, which was in 2014, I believe, they purchased the property. And they've had U-Hauls since 2014, but then they had to be removed. The big issue for the owner is his employees, they get paid commissions for the rental of the U-Haul, so it's really impacted their income.
Okay.
And he's trying to get them back. He owns multiple of these, including ones in the city of St. Cloud, like the one behind Home Depot.
Okay.
And on all of them, he has U-Haul rentals on.
Just trying to understand that. It's a kind of a franchise like any restaurant or anything like that.
Yes, sir.
It's a U-Haul, they go from destination to destination and be able to rent and recover money for the rentals. So,
Yes, sir. And
is there a limit to how many vehicles or how many?
Yeah,
things?
he's only allowed to have so many parked based on the conditional use site plan. He doesn't overpark them anyways, but he's allowed so many. The only question that we'll work out with staff, which I'm actually responding to them tomorrow on their comments, is the staging of the vehicles. So a lot of times, they don't want someone to go inside where the buildings are. So they have 8 parking spaces, actually 11 parking spaces outside of the fence area. And they want the ability, when someone rents one, to be able to stage it out there so they don't have to go through and around their buildings. So they can go right out to the right of way.
Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, anybody on the council, can I entertain a discussion or motion for approval?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, that'll bring us to public hearing item number 3. Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 3 into the record?
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-03, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending Article 3, zoning regulations, Division 26, architectural standards, providing for applicability and effects, severability, scrivener's error, conflict, codification, and effective date.
Good afternoon, council member. My name is Dagmar Segarra, Planning Manager. So tonight's presentation, some of you may recall, we adopted last May on 2021, or 2022, sorry, a residential design standards. And it was the pleasure of the board and director staff to work a little bit more on those residential standards. We're currently working with a consultant to create residential standards that are going to be more specialized and more specific in regards to different areas and addresses the needs of the city. In the meantime, staff was directed by this board, or by the council, to provide a little bit more wording and more standards in the interim. So this is what we're presenting tonight. As I stated, we have been working with a consultant, and one of the directions that this council asked staff to do was to consider the City of Oviedo residential architectural standards, which included more prescriptive and in several cases is more restricted. So based on that direction, this is staff's recommendations. So currently, in regards to the applicability, the existing code applies to all single-family residents, detached duplexes, single-family residents, and only those that expand greater than 50%. The proposed amendment limits them to the same in regards to single-family, detached duplexes, single-family, and townhomes, but applies to those plans applying for preliminary and final master plans, site development plan, and subdivision approval, and do not apply to simple lot splits or lots reconfiguration. So what does this mean? This means that this is basically going to apply for new subdivisions moving forward, and it's not going to apply to any subdivision that has less than 3 lots, which it would be part of the lot splits or lot reconfiguration. And also exempt people that are making additions that are less than 50%. And this is, and just to add, this is also to be in compliance with the statutory legislative language that would allow us to implement this code. It also, the existing 4 exemptions and deviations will remain the same. We just tweak a little bit the deviations from the ordinance to add provisions that these decisions of the council can be appealed if the regulations end up creating a hardship or inhibit innovative and creative design. I went back, sorry. In variety of products, right now, we have some requirements that is that the type of model, paint, color, the elevation. So we are proposing the same language, but we are also adding that it applies to those townhomes or homes across the street, and each townhome unit within a townhome building shall be different from the adjoining units in either type. So basically, when you have all of the townhomes in one building, though in between those units, they have to have a different product, just to create that different type and create a better streetscape. In regards to building orientation, the city currently does not have any requirements. And so we are implementing 3 different types of facades and building orientations into our code. And in the definitions of the primary facade is any facade that is facing a right-of-way, or either it is public or private, or public realm. That will be considered a primary facade. Secondary facade are facades that are visible from those areas, but they're not fronting them. And then you have the rear facade, which is to the rear of the property. So these new residential standards would have all of these units or proposed multi-family or townhomes that has to be either facing the primary facade facing a public right-of-way or a public realm, but it also gives the flexibility to also orient it to an open space area such as a courtyard. So it gives that flexibility for the developer to get creative and create something different and encourage these open space areas that we want to encourage within the city and amenitize them. In regards to the facade and the townhomes design, we currently don't have any standards, and we're proposing language that will provide definitions on the primary and secondary facade, as I previously mentioned, and also limits the number of units of buildings in the length. So what we're trying to avoid is to have these massive 10 townhome unit buildings that are going to exceed a typical design of a typical residential layout. So that's the goal in this language. And also, we established a separation distance between those buildings. In regards to the garage and driveways, right now we have a language that is pretty general. It's just, your garage cannot face more, cannot exceed the 50% of the front facade, and it has to have some mitigation to reduce visual impact. So now we kept basically the language, but we made some changes that in addition to that 50%, if your lot is narrow, you'll have to have access to the garage from either rear or side street. What this means is that it's to avoid to have the garages to be facing a front facade or a public right of way, that it takes most of the lot. Sometimes we got here PUDs that, or even our land development code has small 60-foot lots, 65-foot lot width. So those are the lots that we're going to encourage the creative designs to have these garages to be placed on the side or the rear of the property or the lot. In regards to massing and composition, we have some regulations in regards to not having blank walls, but we're not very defined. So what we're doing now, we're defining it and providing also a list of articulation elements that the developer can choose from. At the moment, we don't offer that. So whatever they provide to us, and it meets the intent, we have to accept it. Now we're giving them a list of about 8 or 10 different articulations that they can choose from, and in a primary facade, they will have to select from those and make it work in that primary facade. So in that way, we have we achieve the desired look that we're trying to achieve. In regards to windows and doors, the requirement is going to be the same, but we have also added language in regards to vertical in orientation windows. What we're trying to avoid is these little narrow windows that are vertical with this massive facade that is then all blank. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And it must meet a 20% in width. So it got to be balanced with that facade. Roofs, we have some elements, but again, we don't have specific elements, and we actually now have a little bit more clarification of what those elements are, and we are requiring modulation of the roof as well, and then we provide examples of what those modulations are to be. Right now, we don't have those options. We just let the developer choose what they wanted to do. So now we're having a little bit more control of the look of the structure. Materials, right now, we don't have any requirements for materials. So what we are requiring is that for each facade, there will be a minimum, at least 2 different types of material. We are limiting the percentage of the use of stucco and wood panels, and we are also creating a minimum percentage of a stone or brick. I think I said that wrong. A minimum percentage of stone or brick and a maximum of stucco or wood. So what we're trying to achieve is to create a facade that has different elements, and that not everything is going to look the same in that facade. And other miscellaneous, in regards, we are proposing requirements in regards to colors. We're just trying to avoid those neon, seeing the dark colors. And then some dumpster screening pads and mechanical equipment that if they're located in the roof, they must be screened. And finally, the storage of anything that will be outside on the sides of the property, then it will remain the same. This means the strategic goal of growth management. DRC approval of recommends approval of this ordinance. At the Planning Commission, they recommended denial. And we took their feedback, which had to do with the applicability. They were concerned that the applicability was too broad and to apply to the little guy. So we made those changes in regards to their feedback. And also the window and the vertical windows, they had concerns about the restrictions of the windows, so we modified the language to accommodate their feedback. In addition, as of yesterday, we received responses from the Growth Management Task Force, the Builders Association, and the Chamber of Commerce. And they have some communication with city managers and city manager's office and staff. And staff is recommending the following additions or changes to the ordinance in the following sections. And if you could include this language into the motion, and it's being requested to the council to include it. Section 5, in the applicability, the language reads as follows. To the extent that the requirement contained in this ordinance are in conflict with any standards or conditions that are part of an approved development order issued by the city or a site plan approved by Osceola County as the effective date of this ordinance, the terms and standards of the approved development order or site plan shall control. And in section 6 of the effective date shall read, this ordinance shall take effect June 1st, 2023. This concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of requests to speak on this item. First up, Heather Isaacs. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Heather Isaacs. I'm the Vice President for Land Development for Taylor Morrison. My address is 2600 Lake Lucian Drive, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I was surprised to see the proposed ordinance on the agenda, as to my knowledge, there was no outreach done with the development community to understand the impact of these standards. In fact, Osceola County recently held the first reading of their architectural standards in the MXD district and worked with the Osceola County Growth Management Task Force over a series of several meetings to explain the standards and listen to industry feedback. It was very successful, and I would encourage the council to continue the ordinance tonight to allow time for engagement with the community impacted most by these changes. Without that opportunity for engagement, I have several questions and concerns. However, given the short time I've been provided here, I'll summarize them as best I can. These were referenced coming from Oviedo. It's important to note that Oviedo does not have single-family detached residential standards. The standards that are in this ordinance come directly from Article 8, Section 8.4 of Oviedo, which is for townhomes only. The standards are temporary, as I know the city's working with a consultant, so I guess one question would be, why rush to adopt something now rather than waiting? It's likely to cause confusion among staff and delay project reviews. Regarding the applicability, I appreciate the additional language that was proposed for tonight, as I believe that's going to alleviate some concerns of a lot of us that have projects that have already been approved and not knowing how this was going to be implemented. The demonstration of compliance standards section states that council is now going to be approving building permits. I'm concerned that council approval of building permits will delay the review process and overburden staff and council with agenda items. Limiting front-loaded product to larger lots really severely impacts the affordability of housing supply for people like firefighters, teachers, people that maybe don't qualify for affordable housing, but are also looking for home ownership. So when you require everything to be rear-loaded, you double the amount of infrastructure, so it automatically increases the cost. A lot of the photos and examples that are in the ordinance, which also come directly from Oviedo, are specifically townhome related. There were no pictures of single-family detached units in the ordinance. I also did not see an example of either a townhome or a single-family detached unit that meets all of the standards in the ordinance, as I think that's going to be incredibly difficult for anybody to comply with. I've got concerns about the requirement for the amount of stone. How is that going to be applied to a second story? Is the city looking for stone to be on a second story? Usually that's used as a grounding material to... Thank you.
I'll give you 30 more seconds to wrap up if you have a...
I just request that the council continue this item and have staff reach out to the development community. Osceola County really had a lot of success working with us. We're not here to tell you not to do anything, But there's a lot of these things that are either conflicting in the code or simply don't make sense or are unachievable.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Tina Demostine. I'm sorry. Please state your name and address for the record.
Tina Demosny, I'm Land Entitlement Manager for MI Homes, 400 International Parkway, Suite 470, Heathrow, Florida. I definitely appreciate the efforts you guys are making to improve the quality of the development. I think we're lucky because we're actually building in some of the communities that have ARBs and have some really high architectural standards. We're just a little concerned with the even the new language for the applicability, because we have approved PSPs. We're actually already selling homes. We have all of our products designed. We've been through multiple rounds of ARB, adding fenestration, but it hasn't been through the city. And I don't think our product will meet the standards in this code. And we have approved PSPs, and we're starting sales right now. And that's in Edgewater, was recently annexed, and Center Lake Ranch, we're right there too, all of our products done. I don't know that it had enough architectural detail that I know they tried to revise the applicability to be more clear on that, but it left it open that if there's a section of the code that we didn't show, it could still be applicable. And, you know, we're already into sales. And so we'd like a little more time to be able to work with staff and kind of make that. We'll be glad to share all of our product because we think we're meeting it fairly well, but like this rock standard, we don't meet. There are some standards in there. I think there's some areas in the code where they're pushing a lot of this, and I think Heather mentioned it, she did a great job. They're pushing a lot of stuff to city council. I think Dave Tomac did a great job in the county streamlining things and having, you've got talented staff here, utilize them for their resources versus bringing every single item unless it's an appeal back to you. So I think you have an architect, you have talented staff on board. That, some of these things should go through DRC or, the internal reviews before they have to hit council. There are several things that Dagmary said which are fantastic, which are great in the intent, but when I read the code, it doesn't actually say that. Some of the stuff on the secondary facades, the language that she said makes sense, but the code as it's written doesn't actually do that. As far as like secondary facades, there's a few things where the building length, wherever it's less, is that less building length or least restrictive, just some language I think can be tightened up, and we'd be glad to provide some feedback. I've just started marking it. I literally got this on Monday, so trying to work through it. A lot of standards. There's they call it a side load garage, but some of the definitions, it maybe needs to be beefed up in the definitions, like what's your intent? Is that a house that has a garage in front but side loads in the front? Or is it one that, there's different nomenclature that I think could be fleshed out by adding some pictures and details in here that are associated with single-family residential. Because it's very clear that this code was written for a townhouse code, not for single-family residential, which is, it's just a little bit of a different animal. So, a great step, great start. I think I've only got like 2 more, if you can give me.
30 more seconds if you
Yes,
want to
sir.
wrap it up.
Thank you. Dun, 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 dun. I'm having our architectural team look at the buildings. I think we've got plenty of the up and down and forward and back, but the brick and rock, I think that's really going to be a tough one to meet. And while I understand that the city doesn't want a sea of stucco, there may be something like a monotony code where you say no more than 1 in 5 can be all stucco, but you're going to end up creating a neighborhood that's all brick and rock instead of having a little bit of differentiation in the buildings. And there are some people that just don't want brick and rock. They want more of a stucco building, and we always offer that as an option. But I would say 80% of our stuff does have brick and rock, but it's usually at least one option. And having at least that be an option, but maybe not more than a certain number, would be a way to allow a little bit more flexibility and not create the anti-monotony of all rock. And there's a few other things where there's just conflicts, like code says something and the next paragraph says something else. So we appreciate time to work with staff on that before we bring it back.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else in the audience like to speak to this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ron Hood. I live at 1756 up the road, St. Cloud. One thing to notice, my address is St. Cloud. So those architectural standards are the way that the city can control the growth within the city, which we all know is growing faster than the things that we have to support the city. And those architectural standards and those community development standards, that's your tool as a commission to do that. And, you know, cleaning up language here or there and those things, that's one thing. But just remember, that is how you can control that growth. And yes, it's going to cost them more to do it, but if that developer's not paying for it, you will. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else in the audience like to speak to this item? Please state your name and address for the record. And if you haven't already, fill out a form after you're done speaking. Thank you.
Dirk Webb, President and CEO of St. Cloud Chamber of Commerce. First of all, I wanted to reiterate some of the things that Heather had to say, and that is during a previous iteration of this ordinance, we had some time to spend with some of my members who were very concerned about having projects in the pipeline. And so I want to make sure that those concerns are brought before you as well. A couple of my advisors are actually in the room now, and they were very concerned with some of these standards. I want to say gently that I was a very interested observer where the fact that the Planning Commission denied, staff approved, and then it landed on my desk from the Growth Management Task Force of the other chamber. And so you have one here, and we're happy to look at things as they come through. And I say that with the utmost respect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening. James Dix, DIX Developments, 103 Commerce Street, Lake Mary. Good evening. Just take a quick minute or 2 minutes, maybe 3. But I didn't know anything about this except an email was passed around from developer to developer, builder to builder. So I never saw anything about this. So I just wanted to just state a few obvious. A lot of it was already said. Quite frankly, for me, I've been working on a project here for over 2 years. It's been approved since 2017. Staff's been doing a great job for me, so I'm pretty happy with it. But for design standards, I mean, specifically, since the rock and brick have been beat down already, I would like to say what happens when everybody has to have rock and brick and you can't get rock and brick? Does it stop until you can get it? Personally, my house, I would never want it on my house. And I certainly would hate to know that the city council member of the city that I live in demanded that I had rock or brick on my house. I would have a problem with that. Secondly, I think you did a great job in going to the source and hiring somebody to actually give you a report to consider what you really want to do that's encompassing everything. So an interim solution doesn't really make sense if you're not really sure what you want to do yet. I mean, that's why you hired this person. So I'm not really sure why you would want to do an interim step until that report was completed. City of St. Cloud, I have one project. It's a big project here. Like I said, I've been working on it a long time. Love the city. Love being part of it. Looking forward to having a substantial investment. I'm the master developer, so I do pretty much everything on the ground. I'd like to say it doesn't really bother me what's going up because that's the builder's problem, but that's not the case. It affects everybody from the ground up. And some of these things really may not really work out. You're looking at some of those townhomes of those illustrations. I mean, if you really think about it and you had to live in a townhome, and I think right now in all of my projects from Citrus County to Brevard, the number one thing is affordability. What can a firefighter or a nurse or, somebody that's out there working hard, what can they afford? And if they're stuck, you can only afford this, but the city said, by the way, you have to have this. If you live in a townhome that abuts a green space and you're looking at somebody else's front door and you've got family or somebody coming over and they got to park down the street or in the backyard, they got to walk around the building to come up the sidewalk to walk in your front door. I mean, why do you even have a front door on the front of your townhome? So you can see your neighbor and you guys can look at each other through either a Ring camera or something. I mean, those are little things that I think you need to look at a lot harder. And that's why you have a consultant. I think you can get a lot more feedback if the other developers and builders had time to come out and give that to you. Like me, it was kind of last minute. But I think you're doing a great job, and I just wanted to bring those couple comments out and looking forward to working with everybody and looking forward to continuing my project with staff. And that's all I got to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else in the audience like to speak to this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Richard Clark, 2708 Wortham Lane, Kissimmee, Florida. And I am a licensed and practicing landscape architect here in the city. And I would like to reiterate what's been asked of you to table this as opposed to moving forward with it. If it's an interim and you've already got some code already in place, putting this into here, I agree with what's been said. It's only going to slow things down. But the problem is it's not going to cost just the developers, it's not going to cost the end users, it's going to cost the city because it's going to increase the conflicts and the amount of time that it's going to take for review and to get things taken care of. This is a very complicated start of information, and nor is it clear and straightforward. I would reiterate again, if this is applicable to all renovations over 50%, and there's some, things in there that need to be clarified, but does that mean that every home that goes over 50% that comes in here is going to have to come to you for council approval for a building permit? I mean, the way that it's written right now, that's the way it reads to me. I would defer, of course, to Mr. Manzares because he's the expert in that. But the only thing from a landscape standpoint, it was a comment on the rear facade, if it's visible from the right-of-way, but it doesn't indicate that it's facing on the right-of-way, that it, has to have two elements of that, one of which is landscaping, which isn't even an architectural detail. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that you can put landscape into it because that gives me job security. But when you put landscape architecture into building architecture standards, you're kind of stepping outside the box. And once again, I ask that you go ahead and table this item rather than move forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else in the audience like to speak to this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Lisa Klepper, and I live at 1752 up the road. I just wanted to say I love the new changes and the addition to the words to really help the city to, be more beautiful. I think if you limit it, and I get that there's going to be some more changes after this, putting this in place now is going to keep people from maybe rushing to build a bunch of things to try to get in before we have our final standards. So I agree with making it maybe a little bit more stringent right now to prevent people from trying to rush in to build something maybe that's a little subpar at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. So I've been on city council for 6 years now, and I've been begging for architectural standards. I'm like, stuff is just, we got a fire hose coming in, and we got nothing, and then we got something adopted a few months ago, and we directed staff and said, please go find something to get into place, because I'm telling you, 6 years I've been begging for architectural standards. So the fact that we have a consultant doesn't make me feel good because I've been begging it for 6 years. So in my feeling, these ordinances are living, breathing documents. And they're always going to be able to be amended or changed if things come up. And I like the architectural standards that staff came up with, and I know they worked very hard on it. And, nothing's going to be perfect. I'm not surprised the building community is here arguing against it because that's what's happened every time we've brought up architectural standards. That's just what happens, right? So I would like to remind council that it is a first reading. And so if there is some language that needs to be cleaned up, that's something we can work on between now and then. And I fully support getting these in place because, as one of the residents said, it's like we just keep kind of kicking the can down the road and then things keep going. And I don't know. I feel like staff can work on if there's some comments in there that need to be clarified, definitions, things like that can happen between the first and second readings. I make a motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval from Councilmember Matheny. Do we have any other discussion from the council?
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Fletcher. I would just like to say, I'm sorry, we have a light on from the attorney.
Yes, I was just going to ask if we could, we're okay with moving forward with the motion, but we would like or request that it be for final adoption on the March 9th meeting as opposed to the next meeting,
I'm fine with that.
because we'd have to work on the agenda item pretty quick to get it on. So if the motion could be first approval, first reading for final adoption on March 9th, consideration of final adoption on March 9th.
And in the presentation, they mentioned some recommended changes. Does that need to be included in the motion as well?
Well, yes.
already made 'em.
It's already part of it. So, yeah, we'll incorporate those in. There was some discussion on some other language that's in there that we would want to tweak and clean up a little bit to deal with that, too.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I do think these are beautiful standards, and I appreciate Councilmember Matheny for bringing this, fast-tracking this, or getting our city to fast-track it, because I do think we need these standards, and I do think that I think our city should be held to a higher standard architecturally for residential homes, and I also understand the concern from builders and from people in industry. I'm a builder myself, so I do understand the extra costs that could bring. And I would like to work with our chamber and with the residents and with the people in the industry to come to something we can all agree on and live with. But I also do like these standards. So I think, like Councilmember Matheny said, that this is a first reading. So a lot of these issues can be worked through before the second reading. And I definitely will be paying attention to the changes that are made before that second reading, before I sign off my final approval on that. But those are just my comments, and Councilmember Gilbert has his light on.
Well, thank you, Councilmember. 6 years has been a long time, and our standards need to be where St. Cloud proud, and I agree with 100%, but we can tweak it. I understand what the builders talked about, I understand what the developers talked about. It makes real money and it makes real sense to do that. But if we don't adopt some standards, then it's, free for all. So I agree with you on that, but I also agree with the builders that there can be some median and the staff can work on it. And of course, the attorney made a great point of give us a little time to tweak this out before the final reading. So I love St. Cloud, and I've been asked to make sure we grow in a certain way, in a positive way for the citizens of St. Cloud. And I think this move is a great move for the growth in a professional manner, and also a manner that we can be proud to be St. Cloud citizens.
Well, we have a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. So, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Gilbert?
I'm denying this.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny? Aye. Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1.
Okay, that'll bring us to public hearing item number 4. Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 4 into the record?
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-04, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning a utility easement located north of Misty Morin Court, east of North Narcoossee Road, and south of Clap Sims Judah Road, specifically described in the body of this ordinance, providing for severability, conflict, and effective date.
Thank you. Melissa Dunklin, Community Development Director. The request before you tonight is for an abandonment of easement at Estates at Nona Sound. The easement is located on the site addressed as 11328 Clap Sims Judah Road. This is a graphic representation of the existing easement that's being requested to be abandoned. The item was routed for review, and there were no objections received. This request meets the intent of the strategic plan goal for infrastructure. On December 15th, the DRC recommended approval. Likewise, it is requested that City Council approve ordinance number 2023-04, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this on all 4 of these coming up, but we've double-checked with everybody that there's no need for any of the easements or the municipalities, utilities, and everybody else. Nobody needs anything from these properties.
One second.
Confirmed.
Yes, we will do that. I just wanted to confirm that we did not specifically reach out for a second time, but we did route it for review. And during the review, we received no comments from the county and no objections from any utilities. But we did not follow up and ask if they needed any additional.
And this is the first reading for all of these,
Yes.
right? So they'll come back? Okay. I just want to just make sure, like, I know sometimes it's like no comment, but it's like you didn't hear a all clear either, you know? So just, that's going to be my comment on all 4 of these. But that was.
Any other discussion from the council? Can I entertain a motion for approval?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, will you please call item number 5 into the record?
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning a utility easement located north of Misty Morin Court, east of North Narcousie Road, and south of Clap Sims Duda Road, specifically described in the body of this ordinance, providing for suburbility, conflicts, and effective date.
Again, Melissa Dunklin, Community Development Director. This is another request for an abandonment of easement at Estates at Nona Sound. The easement is located on the site addressed as 11252 Clap Sims Duda Road. Again, here is a graphic representation of the second easement that they are requesting to abandon. This item was routed for review and received no objections. This request meets the intent of the strategic plan goal for infrastructure. On December 15th, DRC recommended approval. Likewise, it is requested that this council approve ordinance number 2023-05, and staff is available for any questions on this one as well.
Thank you. Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, can I entertain discussion or a motion for approval?
So moved.
We have a motion for approval for
Second.
Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Gilbert. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, please read item number 6 into the record.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-06, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending Article 3 zoning regulations, Division 5, residential zoning district regulations, Table 3-5, agriculture and residential uses of the Land Development Code of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, providing for suburbility, conflict, codification, administrative corrections, publication, and effective date.
How you doing?
Deputy Mayor, council members, Dave Tomac with City Manager's Office. These next 2 items are actually kind of about the same stuff. This first one is an ordinance to amend your land development code, specifically your agricultural zoning district. and primarily to transition properties that are already zoned ag in the county when you annex them into the city. And then at some point, when they actually want to develop, they'll actually pick another zoning code consistent with your future land use map. So the key changes, although we get some great pictures in there, I'm sure you're tired of pictures by now, is we're adding aviaries, beekeeping, community gardens, general farming for personal needs, commercial kennels, stables, and boarding facilities, and livestock, grazing animals and small animals, because those are typical agricultural uses. Not necessarily in a residential neighborhood, but in agricultural zoning, you see those kinds of uses all the time. There is a little one in the table that refers you to the Code of Ordinances, which we'll be discussing next, so that there are some best management practices for that. The reason we're doing these ordinances is because the council requested it back when I guess we were annexing some properties that were zoned ag in the county, and they had concerns. So council asked us to work on that so that we could seamlessly transition those folks so we don't change their lifestyle right away. So what we've done is we've taken your agricultural zoning district, which already exists, modifies it to be more reflective of the rural lifestyle. So a lot of pretty pictures. At the end of the day, we did meet with the Osceola County Animal Services Director. We met with the Agricultural Ad Hoc Committee that was established by the City Council. Those folks were very patient with me, but did a great job making sure that the ordinances were effective for what they needed. I learned a lot about best management practices, which hopefully I won't screw up on the next item. Your Chamber of Commerce met with me a couple of times and also supported these ordinances. Planning Commission at its meeting on January 17th recommended approval, and we would ask that you do the same thing. Please approve this. It's a public hearing, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. So, as Mr. Tomac suggested, I think all of this predates all of you. But what I would like to say is, y'all are getting some stuff out the door, you know, like all this backlog that we had all these years, so things are starting to move. But that is true. This came up when we were annexing, and so I had some members of the agricultural community reach out to me and tell me their concerns. So I asked at the time for City Council to create the ad hoc group, because I don't know what they need. I don't have, farm animals. And so, and when I had my agenda review, I did ask Mr. Tomac, they are happy with it. It did, satisfy all their concerns. He assured me it did. I also would like to congratulate him, because I do think this was his first task assigned at the city. And
What's the number one on my list?
And he got it done.
Yeah.
And he got it done. So, yeah, I appreciate all the hard work on this. I know we got really far into it, and then it was decided, I don't know, there was something weird with the language or whatever, and then it kind of fell off and went into a pile. And so I appreciate you guys for getting this done. And that's kind of the end of my statement.
Any other discussion, or can I entertain a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion for approval from Councilmember Matheny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Here, aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, please read item 7 into the record.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-07, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending St. Cloud City Code Chapter 8, Animals, amending Section 8-1, County Animals Control Ordinance adopted by reference enforcement, amending Section 8.2, number of pet animals restricted, creating new Section 8-6, animal restrictions for property sown agriculture, creating new Section 8-7, exemptions for not-for-profit youth or special need adult organizations, providing for suburbility, conflict, codification, administrative correction, publication, and effective date.
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor, council members, Dave Tomac, City Manager's Office. So this is the companion to the last one. We basically wanted to modify the Code of Ordinances to address all the kind of the animal procedures so that it was put in the right place. So the first thing, which was very clear with the ad hoc group, was that they wanted to make sure we incorporated best management practices for animals of all sizes. It's an urban city. Want to make sure that for the ag zone stuff in the city, that we followed those practices so that things were done safely and healthily, and they were very clear about the different things that they want to make sure that we did, so that, you know, they also didn't want something to happen that would, you know, make a bad situation. In addition, some of the requirements were to create more of a diverse community. You know, this is where community gardening can come in, and some of the things, the farm-to-table stuff is more possible by adding this stuff. We increased the number of chickens allowed for backyard chicken keeping permit from 4 to 6, current with consistent practices in the field. So you get more eggs. And I hear they're a commodity right now. We've provided for an exemption from limitations on some of the pet animals if you can confirm that you're part of a 4-H or FFA program. They have pretty clear oversight on those programs, so we're allowing 4-H and FFA programs to continue as long as they're supported by that oversight. We do restrict swine. Remember in the last ordinance, we took out the exclusion, but we do provide that no more than 2 per parcel. So whether it be the cute little pot-bellied pigs for a while, or the full-blown, you know, hogs, you can have 2. And obviously, this is in the agricultural zoning district. We've established a maximum limit for animals in the ag zone, again, consistent with those healthy best management practices. Pet dogs, 4. Cats, 8, because apparently they keep the mice away in the barns and things. Other small animals weighing less than 40 pounds, we've limited it to no more than 20 per acre. Get pictures of all of them there. The goats and pigs shouldn't be in that picture, but never mind. They're more than 40 pounds. If it's between 41 and 400 pounds, that's where you get your sheep and goats. It's a total of 5 per acre. And if you got the guys that are like over 400 pounds, and this is at mature weight, this is where your pigs, cattle, horses, donkeys, mules come in. The limit's 1 head per acre, and you have to have a minimum of 2 acres for these animals. Obviously, you all remember that it's 2 swine per parcel. Again, I took this through the ad hoc committee. They were very clear on this, so it was very impressive. We did also discuss these requirements with the Animal Services Director at the county. We again had a couple of meetings with the Chamber of Commerce, and we've got support from all of them. Made some changes, but they weren't significant enough to warrant special thing, but they did participate in making it in the form that you have today. And the Planning Commission, at its meeting on the January 17th, did recommend approval, and so we're asking for the same thing this evening for approval of ordinance 2023-07. Thank you. I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? Please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Ron Hood, 1756 Up the Road, St. Cloud, Florida. I just have a question for clarification. We went through that pretty quick there. We have a 12-acre homestead where, you know, my father, my sister, and I, we have animals, right, that are in this agriculturally zoned land. In the online agenda, it listed chickens limited to 6 chickens.
So you need to address the council, please.
Yeah, it was limited to 6 chickens. Here, I think I may have understood it's different, and so that was my concern, is that we have more than 6 chickens. We have a large family out there. There's no residents around us. It's all hens. There's nobody waking you up in the morning, because then they would wake me up too. So we have no rooster. So, but anyway, that was the clarification and the question that I had. Thank you.
Mr. Tomac, could you clarify that for this gentleman?
Sir, yeah, and I'm sorry I went so fast that I glossed over that. The backyard chicken program is for anybody in the city to have up to 6 with this proposed ordinance. In the agriculturally zoned properties, a chicken weighs less than 40 pounds at mature weight, so you can have up to 20 per acre in combination with the other small animals. So it's not limited to the 6.
Thank you. Would anybody else in the audience like to speak to this? If not, Councilmember Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Tomac. And what we understand is when you order chickens, you order 5. So if we limit it to 4, which one loses out, right? So we got 5, and sir, to your deal, you got plenty of room there for chickens, and we like chickens because have you seen the egg prices lately? Okay, so that, and thank you for explaining that. But if you order chickens online, you get 5 chickens, and we just don't want to leave one out. So that's why we went to 6 chickens.
Is that all, Mr. Gilbert?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Had to get a little light today.
Anybody else on the council? Can I entertain a motion for approval?
Motion.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Gilbert and a second from Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk, will you please call roll?
And Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, will you please call item number 8 and to read item number 8 into the record?
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-08, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning a utility easement located north of Jones Road, east of Narcousie Road, and west of Outback Road, specifically described in the body of this ordinance, providing for suburbility, conflicts, and effective date.
Thank you, Melissa Dunklin, Community Development Director. The request before you is for an abandonment of easement at Preston Cove. The subject site is located north of Jones Road, east of Narcousie Road, and south of Outback Road. The applicant is requesting the vacation of a 20-foot utility easement, and here is a graphic representation of that easement that you probably can't see very well because it's very small. This request was routed for review, and we received no objections. This request meets the strategic plan goal for infrastructure. On January 4th, DRC recommended approval. Likewise, it is requested that City Council approve ordinance number 2023-08, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item?
Only if you have any questions.
Please approach. I'm sorry. You're the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. If nobody in the audience wants to speak to it, I will open it up for discussion or motion for approval from the council.
Motion.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Gilbert, a second from Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right. Madam Clerk, please read item number 9 into the record.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2023-18, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, closing, vacating, and abandoning the platted utility easement located west of Narcousie Road and north of Jones Road, specifically described in the body of this ordinance, providing for an effective date.
Good evening, council members. Dagmary Segarra, Planning Manager, and this is the last vacation of the night. The property, as I stated, the property, this is a vacation of Eastman. The property is located west of Narcoossee Road and north of Jones Road. The applicant is requesting the vacation of a 20-foot utility easement. The subject property contains approximately 1.03 acres, and the utility easement contains approximately 0.09 acres. This is a sketch of the easement. It meets the strategic goal of infrastructure, and it meets the criteria of the Land Development Code for vacation of an easement. And DRC reviewed it and recommended approval, and it's requested from the City Council to approve Ordinance 2223-18. I'll be glad, we send out notifications to all the utility providers and Osceola County, and we received no objections. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, I will entertain discussion or a motion from council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Matheny, second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Brings us to item number 10. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 10 into the record?
Resolution number 2023-013R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, granting a conditional use for heliport and helipad in the P Professional Zoning District on the 15.035 acres known as St. Cloud Hospital, generally located north of 17th Street, west of Bodinger Avenue, and south of Kansas Avenue, as described in the body of this resolution.
Good evening, council members. Dagmar Segarra, Planning Manager. This is a request for a conditional use for a Florida hospital located at north of 17th West Street and Bodinger Avenue and south of Kansas Avenue. The currently zoning of the property is professional and future land use is private institutional. The proposed conditional use for a helipad. The conditional use which is a conditional use in the professional district. The facilities have no adverse impacts on the city's facility. This is the future land use designation demonstrating the area surrounding the property, which is also professional. And the zoning also showing the surroundings as future land use of public. So this is a site plan for the conditional use. The hospital currently has a helipad on site. During our research, staff couldn't find any documentation of the original approval of the helipad, and now that they're trying to relocate the helipad, we needed to make it consistent with our code. And the relocation of the helipad can be, it is a more centralized, closer to the emergency room, and it will fit into the future expansion of the hospital. It meets the strategic goals of growth management, and staff recommendation is approval, and the planning commission recommendation was also approval. It is a request of the City Council approval of Resolution 2022-8013. I believe that the applicant is present to answer any questions, and I'll be also available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, Councilmember Matheny.
Thank you. So I was reached out to by an adjacent property owner today, and they had concerns about the relocated helipad location. I showed them the concept plan, and they were comfortable with it at that point because I said, look, it's just, on the other side of the parking. So when it gets approved with this concept plan, is that tying them to that location, or could, when it moves forward, be like on a property line? I mean, just wondering, since I was contacted by property owners.
Yeah, the conditional use resolution has an Exhibit B, which is going to have the concept plan.
The concept plan?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Councilmember Matheny, a second from Councilmember Gilbert. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny. Motion carries 4-0.
All right, that brings us to the council action section of tonight's meeting. Madam Clerk, will you please read council action item 1 into the record?
Resolution number 2023-027R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, adopting the substantial amendment to the fiscal 2022 Annual Action Plan for the Community Development Block Grant Program, providing for conflict and providing an effective date.
Good evening, Antoinette Forbes, Economic Development Director. This item is to address a substantial amendment to the 2022 Action Plan for Community Development Block Grant dollars. As St. Cloud's an entitlement city, this year we were awarded $357,697. The original action plan for this year was approved back in July of 2014. Part of that part of that plan addressed how we intended to spend the funds. And so the only change we're looking to do is move $50,000 from economic development over to housing programs. The reason for that is that we originally wanted that $50,000 to go towards the chamber so they can do some technical assistance to micro enterprises. However, through more conversations with them, it was determined that they don't have the resources to do the extensive amount of paperwork and documentation that's required as far as that program is concerned. So we're now looking to reallocate that funding from economic development to housing programs to allow for a weatherization program in partnership with OUC. As you can see, the total amount has not changed. Part of the process to change the category is a citizen participation process. So we have a public comment period which started January 26th to February 25th. It is posted on our website for people to review the amendment, and also they can make comments to the Economic Development Office. And then the second portion is to get council approval. Once it is approved, we will submit to HUD through their Integrated Disbursement and Information System called IDIS, which formalizes that we have now reallocated the funding. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 2023-027R, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this item? If not, I'll entertain discussion or a motion from the council.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gilbert.
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny. Deputy Mayor Urban.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please read council action item number 2 into the record.
Discussion and possible action regarding the request for a reduction of lien for code enforcement case number 2011-1300. The property address for this case is 20 Massachusetts Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida.
Mr. Mazeres.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So this is the first of 3 items that are before you that are reductions of, requests for reductions of code enforcement liens. Under the city's policy that was adopted a while ago, if the liens exceed the amount of $50,000, then they go before the code enforcement special magistrate first, who makes a recommendation, and then come to the city council for final approval. If the lien is less than $50,000, then the council has delegated authority to the special magistrate to address reductions of those liens. So these are the first. There are 3 today before you. The first 2 have the same respondent in it as the clerk read in. The first one is 20 Massachusetts Avenue. This is a property that was essentially out of compliance for about 322 days. It's a violation related to a structure that wasn't properly maintained in accordance with city code. The property was ultimately brought into compliance. However, a fine was accruing at $250 a day from the original violation. This matter is an old case. It went before the Code Enforcement Board back in 2011. So it is an older case. The respondent had approached the city and requested a reduction of the fine, of the lien. In your packet is a copy of a reduction in fine lien settlement agreement, which has been reviewed by staff and reviewed by the city manager. So the respondent is requesting, and the city manager recommended approval of a reduction of the fine, which has accrued, the lien, which has accrued to $80,690.24. And is, today the request is to approve a reduction to $8,240.24, with it being paid within 30 days of the date of approval by the city council. As with all these, if it is not paid in accordance with whatever reduction the council authorizes today, the lien would revert back to its original full amount. That's the first items, and I believe the respondent's here, and so if he wants, he can come address each item as we come over.
Thank you, sir. Would the property owner like to speak to this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
Alan Fink, P.O. Box 701329, St. Cloud, Florida. I've been here for over 40 years, and I think it's a wonderful town. And I was very moved by the beginning of the meeting for the Pledge of Allegiance. I hadn't heard that since I've been in school, which was a long time ago. So that was very nice, and I appreciate that you respect and do that still. I haven't heard it, but thank you for that. And I was blind during this time frame, so normally I would, do more diligently to get things together, and I just couldn't do anything. I could feel my way around the house, because I'm familiar with the house where I live, you could find the bathroom because you remember where it is. But when you're blind, that's about all you can do. So I just couldn't do it. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Matheny.
I wanted to ask council, because we have a new council since we've had these conversations, but I was listening to the BOCC meeting on Monday, and actually they brought up code enforcement. I don't know if anybody else was listening to it. And so one of the concerns that a commissioner brought up, which I thought was a really valid position, was I guess the county had adopted a procedure to try to clear the glut of, code enforcement cases. And so the commissioner was saying, okay, I think this time should end now, where you just drop it to 10%. Right, that's kind of what they were doing to clear out their backlog. And they were saying, I really feel like that is taking away a tool of the code enforcement department. Because if everybody knows, it doesn't really matter, just let it run up, and then they're gonna cut it, and it doesn't, it kind of takes away some teeth from the code enforcement. I personally feel like our code enforcement do a wonderful job. I know it's a tough job. I wouldn't want to do that job. It's very difficult. But I know that we've kind of gotten into that, and I'm going to ask the city manager, but I think that is something that we got into with previously, because we were trying to clear a bunch of cases, I know, earlier, a few years ago, and I think we kind of got into the habit of a 10%. Do we have did we actually adopt?
So there is a policy, but it was not adopted by the city council, is my understanding, that it was worked on between the prior city manager and the city clerk.
Yeah, it's an internal policy.
And what was it?
So it's based on the length of time the violation remained non-compliant with the code enforcement magistrate's order. So up to 5 years is 10%, more than 5, up to 10 is 20%, and so on and so forth.
So I guess we're probably not going to resolve it today, right? But I just wanted to ask your feeling on it. I definitely want our code enforcement to feel like we back them up and support them, and we don't just, throw their fees and fines out the window. I know Mr. Fink, sorry, I don't have my glasses on, I can't read my handwriting. I know he had extenuating circumstances with his health, but sometimes that's not always the case. And we did have a case probably before all y'all got on council where we enforced the entire fee. because the property was such a struggle for everyone who lived around it. It felt like that was kind of a slap in their face. Like these people had been living with this horrible condition, and like it felt like a slap to cut the fine. But I just wanted to ask you guys if we wanted to give some direction to our city manager to kind of look at that. I definitely want to find a way to support our code enforcement and not just kind of cut everybody's fee down to 10%. I mean, I didn't know how everyone felt. We got a new council up here.
I agree with that.
Can I add something?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This home was never an eyesore. It was involving a dishwasher, a light switch, a fan, and a dripping pipe in the garage. Very small items, a very small list, but I was blind, I was dealing with cancer, and I was taking care of, and still am, my disabled wife. Now, I know that's hard to do when you're blind, but I could feel around the house and she could see. So together we managed around our home, but we couldn't do anything else. So that's extenuating circumstances. I definitely have been with code. Whenever a tenant has a problem that they cause or report, if they can't take care of it like they're supposed to, in our agreement, I take care of it. I just couldn't do it back then. I was blind.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think Councilmember Matheny wasn't referring to your particular case, but just
No.
in general, right?
Just in general, I do understand that Mr. Fink has had like 181 dealings with our code enforcement, so has been a kind of a long-standing situation. I know you had your health issues and your wife and all that. I'm not really particularly talking about you, but just kind of, do we want to give some guidance to our city manager moving forward on these? I personally don't like it that we cut everything to 10% because I feel like everybody just gonna takes tools away from our code enforcement folks.
Can I make another comment?
One second, Mr. Mazeris can
Thank you.
speak.
The issue is, and I will tell you that I professionally have a legal issue with the establishment of set fines at any level, which is why I was not in favor of adopting this schedule here. The statutory code related to code enforcement says that when a fine is imposed and a lien is created, in the statute it says it needs to be based on 3 factors: the gravity of the violation, the cooperation of the respondent, and whether the respondent has had any other violations. So it's specifically designed to be for a particular case. So setting a standard, whether it's reduced to 10% or follow it based on the age and all that, like was in what Mrs. Miller read to you, I think is contrary to the statute. Each case has to stand on its own merits. So I agree with Councilwoman Matheny that it shouldn't just be an immediate drop down to 10%. Sometimes it should be lower, sometimes it should be higher, again, depending on those 3 factors that I met. That's the guidance that I think is in the law. The guidance that I think we have had an issue here from the City Council with regard to these is some councils are more inclined to be a little harder, and some are so we've kind of gone back and forth because you are dealing with citizen issues to deal with it. So we certainly can move forward with this, but I would encourage you that it has to be done on a case-by-case basis, like you're doing tonight with Mr. Fink's matter.
Right, but they always come to us already set up at like a 10%.
Right, but they're recommendations to you.
Right.
And usually staff looks at it. What we do internally with all of these is when we get a request from any respondent, we look at it, and before it ever goes to the city manager, we meet with the code enforcement staff who work the case, and we ask them, tell us what happened with this particular case and this particular respondent. And again, we circle back to those 3 factors. Was the respondent cooperative? Do they have other violations? What's the gravity of the situation? And so staff, the code enforcement staff will give us a recommendation on the request before Mrs. Miller ever sees it. So when she's signing off on it, the code enforcement staff has already said, we lived with this case for a while, we're okay with this reduction. And that's how it's done. So, because they're the ones that, they're the ones that deal with the respondents and deal with it all. Respectfully and frankly, there's another case here involving Mr. Fink also, right? So those are things that the council and the code enforcement staff and the special magistrate take into account when they're looking at these reductions. So again, my suggestion, I understand what you're saying, but I think you have to stay focused on the particular case and agree that there shouldn't be a set standard about how low you go with them. So we need some discussion on this particular item.
Councilmember Gilbert.
Yes, I understand circumstances, I understand illnesses, I understand all that, but I back our code enforcement because it's a very tough job. And if we want the city to be what the citizens want the city to be, we need to back them as much as we back the police and fire and everybody involved. If we get a parking ticket and we don't pay it in 45 days, guess what happens? It goes up, and it never goes down. There's never a negotiable thing for parking tickets, and I think that's a part of code enforcement. Those people putting out those parking tickets are looking at our interests of what we put into this and what we make the standards of living. So 10%, I don't know where that came from. I understand you saying case-by-case basis, but we got to have some teeth. At one point, we just got to have some teeth, and no disrespect to this gentleman. He has some houses here and he rents, and he had some health issues, which we all do, but I agree with you going forth. We gotta back our code enforcement at some point to say, no, we gave you 2011, 12 years, and I don't know why it's coming to table now. It may be for getting rid of the properties or selling them or whatever, but we have to, as a city, I think, for our citizens, back our code enforcement. That's my only comment on that, and I'm going to give it back to Deputy Mayor or Mr. Fletcher.
Councilmember Fletcher.
So I actually was a code enforcement officer. So I have worked cases for 3, 4, 5, 6 months to watch the board drop them to city cost, and then all of my work went out the window. Correct me if I'm wrong, in your case, this is a tenant. The tenant is living in these homes, right?
Well, yes, and my agreement with the tenant in their lease was that they were to take care of all of their problems that happen, and that, of course, if they don't, then I will. And normally, since these two cases that are presented, the first one and the second one's coming up, I have complied because I could see. When you're blind, has anybody ever been blind?
I understand the challenges. I'm just trying to, the code enforcement case was there, and then there's a tenant who's paying rent and has to put up with all of the issues.
That's right. It's too bad they weren't paying rent.
Excuse me, sir.
And
Please let Councilmember
Oh,
Fletcher
okay,
finish.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
But I fully support code enforcement, and if there's anything that we can do to not drop it to city costs, I'm in favor of that.
And
One more comment, please.
The city costs in this matter are actually in your agreement, and so the reduction that we're requesting is a reduction to $8,200.
I'm just saying in general with what Councilman Matheny was saying.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I would have asked for less, but I didn't. I just wanted it, to proceed, in all truth to tell, I don't think it should be $8,000, maybe $3,000 or something. But I'm not, I'll just go with the flow, The tenant, yeah, if they were paying rent, that'd be great. And living up to their agreement that they signed of taking care of everything, that'd be great. The tenant was not paying rent. The tenant invited code in because they knew they were going to be evicted. It's one of those vengeful type things, you know? And it just happened at a time when I was blind. So since then, since these two episodes, this one and the next one, I've always complied, and I believe on time, because I'm scared to death of code enforcement. So I'm not disrespecting them in any way.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Fletcher, did you have anything else? Oh, thank you. Any other discussion or motions from the council? I guess also I would agree with Councilmember Fletcher, Matheny, and Gilbert is taking a look at some of our processes and adding that to the city manager's list of items. I would like to look at that as well. But right now there's a item in front of us, and seeing if we have a motion from the council.
Motion.
Is that to approve the reduction as presented?
No.
Okay.
It's not to approve it.
It was direction for me to look at it.
Yes.
Okay, so okay.
I apologize. No.
All right, so you want to leave the lien, the motion would be leaving the lien in place at its current amount and then ask the city manager to.
If that's possible, yes, please.
Yeah, if it's possible. If you don't do anything, the lien stays where it is, right?
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gilbert and a second from Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fletcher?
No.
Councilmember Matheny? Aye. Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1.
Okay, so as we understand the motion, then, and for Mr. Fink's benefit also, the council is not willing to reduce the lien at this time. We'd go through a process, and he would have the option, as anybody does, has the option of coming back at a later date to address it. Is that pretty much the direction we, okay. So the lien's going to stay in place at the amount it is right now. It's not getting any bigger, but it is staying in place.
So since it was denied, so it's going to go back, and the city manager is going to look at, like, what changes though? Like, nothing's going to change.
We're going to, well, that's part of what she's going to look at. I don't know.
Well, isn't the intent for Mr. Fink is trying to sell this property?
I don't know.
No? Oh, I'm sorry, I was misunderstood.
I could raise the money, 8,000 something, but it's not for the sale of that property.
Well, based on the direction, I think I'm going to go back to code enforcement staff and maybe have a better understanding of.
Yeah, we can work.
The offense, I mean, it's over 10 years old. So, you know, I'll go back with staff and we'll discuss further.
Yes, we'll bring it back and some sort of plan and policy.
Okay.
Okay. And of course, you have the next item on the agenda also.
So, Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 3 into the record?
Discussion and possible action regarding the request for reduction of lien for code enforcement case number 2011-1330. The property address for this case is 824 Massachusetts Avenue, St. Cloud, Florida.
Mr. Manzares?
Thank you. So this case, again, this is Mr. Fink, and the clerk read in the record the property address. This case, the lien has accrued to $2,592,100. Now, it's obviously a large amount of money. However, in explaining this case involved, again, a house that needed a considerable amount of maintenance on it and repairs. And as Mr. Fink had spoke about his, I remember the case when the case was presented to the Code Enforcement Board, and his position in front of the Code Enforcement Board at the time was, this isn't my responsibility, because I had put the obligation on my tenants to do that. Under the law, the property owner is the responsible party for any of the violations that occur in that property, and that's why the case proceeded. However, this case, the board ordered that there would be a fine of $100 a day per violation that existed on the property, and there were 23 violations on the property. So essentially, the fine accrued to the amount that it has because it was accruing at $100 per violation with 23 violations on the property, or $2,300 per day. So that's why it accrued to the amount that it is. Property is in compliance, and the item was presented. Mr. Fink contacted, again, city staff looked at it and went to the city manager, and he is requesting a reduction, or at least it agreed to a reduction of that amount, that $2 million plus amount, to $26,151, again payable within 30 days. I also came up about the issue regarding the sale of the prior property, and this, I do not know what the intent here is, but I do understand that Mr. Fink has another property that may be potentially being sold, and these liens, because they're in his name and they're filed in Osceola County, show up on other properties that he owns. So that, to get to the question, that might be part of the urgency why this is being dealt with.
Would you like to speak to that item, sir?
Yes, it's a different house that I was going to sell to pay these fines at the reduction rate. And this also happened while I was blind. This was also a home that the tenant received reduced rent to take care of any problems that occurred there, either present, past, or in the future. And this was also another tenant who stopped paying their rent. And once the eviction was proceeding, they invited code in, and they did their thing. And it was never an eyesore, by the way. It looked like this room, very nice. It needed, caulking, a little painting here and there. This floorboard over here is weak. That's a violation. This light over here on the desk doesn't work. That's a violation. So it sounds like, oh, we had 23 violations. Well, it's stuff like that adds up. This door doesn't close properly, or somebody punched a hole in the door. That's 2 violations. So it adds up fast, and if you multiply it by $100, $100 a day, or $250 a day, yeah, it goes up and up and up. And if you can't address the problem because you're blind, of course it's going to be astronomical.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any discussion or motion from the council? Councilmember Gilbert.
Yes. Attorney, could you give me those 3 qualifications of how we get to reduction?
Sure. The 3 that you're supposed to consider are the gravity of the violation,
Okay.
the cooperation of the respondent, and whether the respondent has any other violations existing on other properties.
So what I understand, the gravity of the 23 incidents is just a part of it, but the cooperation and, what was the third one?
Whether he has any other code violations
Okay.
on other properties.
So 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right?
Well, but remember the gravity of the situation is, in these cases, was important to code enforcement, although Mr. Fink might mention that they seem small and minor. These are tenant properties. These are landlord situations, tenant properties, which can be problematic. I'm not going to argue with him about the fact that sometimes the tenants cause the problems, but again, the owner is the ultimate responsible person.
Yes, just having rental properties myself, the onus has always been on me.
Right.
At the end of the day, the onus has always been on me, no matter if they trash a place or whatever. It comes back to the owner for any violations that occur. And to remedy those violations, I believe, not for the tenant to remedy them. Whatever agreement they may have, that's fine. But
Sure.
when we come back, the onus is on the owner, if I'm understanding this right.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other discussion or motion by council?
I have one more thing, if I would.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, I agree that if the tenant does not comply to our agreement, I ultimately will. But once again, I could not because I was blind. After these two cases, I have, if there was a violation caused by the tenant or not, whatever the violation was, if they couldn't fix it, I would, because, yeah, the law says I'm ultimately responsible. So since these incidents, there have been no fines racking up. Everything's been taken care of in the proper amount of time.
Thank you. We have any other discussion or motion by the council?
I'll make a motion to approve this one.
I have a motion from Councilmember Matheny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Gilbert. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 4 into the record?
Discussion and possible action regarding the request for a reduction of lien for code enforcement case number 2022-815. The property address for this case is 4291 Bull Street, St. Cloud, Florida.
Mr. Manzares.
Thank you. So this, again, is another request for reduction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Another request for reduction of a fine. This is another property which we understand was a rental property. It's 4291 Bull Street. The fine accrued to $63,795. It was a repeat violation related to, essentially, it's in your packet, but there were screens that were left off the window and weren't properly installed, and which is a code violation. Property was out of compliance for 127 days. Which the fine accrued at $500 a day because it was a repeat violation. The property owner had been cited in the past for violations of a similar code and had to come back in front of the special magistrate in 2022. So again, now the respondent has requested reduction, and the presented information, and before you is a request for reduction of that fine to the amount of $6,645.64. Again, if it would be paid within 30 days of approval by the city council. And I don't know if the respondent is present.
Would the property owner like to speak to this item?
I don't think they're present. They're the property owner's out of Miami, I believe.
Do we have any discussion or motion by council?
I make a motion to reduce it to $10,000. Like, they're not even here. Yeah. To $10,000.
Again, payable within 30 days?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a motion from Councilmember Fletcher. Do we have a second? Councilmember Matheny.
So Councilmember Fletcher, I was thinking 20,000.
Okay.
Would you do a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second it then.
We have a motion from Councilmember Fletcher and a second from Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 5 into the record?
Discussion and possible action regarding appointments to boards and committees with vacancies and expiring terms for the Community Redevelopment Agency, Economic Development Advisory Committee, Finance Committee, Historic Preservation Board, Planning Commission, Recreation Advisory Committee, Tree Advisory Committee, and Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Councilmember Matheny.
So I guess this is a question for our attorney. I would prefer someone, our CRA board, all the boards are very important, but I definitely want somebody on the CRA board that is their passion. And so since we only have one applicant and they're the second, we can operate as a CRA with 6 members, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. I would like to hold off until we get somebody that this is their passion to be on the CRA. I don't know how the other council, we don't have to vote, we can discuss it.
You do not have to fill the position tonight.
So
You could seek
that's just
more
kind of my thought
applicants.
on it.
I agree.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I just would like to say I did actually speak with Mr. Perry, and I think he might have mistakenly put this as his second choice. And I think he'd be a great fit for this role, but I do agree that we should open it up to some more applicants since there's only one, and it's an important board, so I'd agree with that.
Do we need to vote on it?
No, I think that's enough direction.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor, can he reapply as his
Certainly.
first choice?
He's in, his first choice is economic development.
Okay.
It's,
No, typically what we've done in instances like that, you've basically allowed more time for more applicants to be considered, and Mr. Perry's name would stay on the list, if you wanted to.
All right. Economic Development Advisory Committee. Do we have any discussions or motions?
For my appointment, I actually haven't had the opportunity to speak to folks on the list, so I'd like to wait until I can connect with them.
I'm sorry, the city clerk's light was on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just want to make a clarification. These are coterminous, so seat number 4 would be Councilmember Gilbert's appointment, and Councilmember Fletcher knows that his is number 5. And then seat 6 is an at-large. Any council member can make a motion for that.
Okay. So Councilmember Fletcher had indicated he would like to wait. Is that possible to wait
Sure.
until the next? Okay. Councilmember Gilbert, do you have any preferences?
My preference is Mr. Perry. That's his first choice, and I want to be on that council.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that?
Yes,
or-
please.
Okay.
So Mr. Gilbert's motion is for Mr. Perry, just need a second and a quick vote.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Gilbert and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
And then we have the at-large appointment. Councilmember Matheny.
Thanks. I'd like to reappoint Mr. Theobald to seat 6.
We have a motion to reappoint Mr. Theobald to seat 6. Do we have a second? I will make a second for that. So we have a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Colby, Deputy Mayor Urban. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, moving on to the Finance Committee, we have an appointment for Councilmember Gilbert and Councilmember Fletcher.
Again, I'd like to wait on mine.
When's the finance committee gonna start? When's the finance committee gonna start meeting in April?
Have a motion, or would you like to defer to the next meeting, Councilmember Gilbert?
Yeah, to the next meeting.
Okay. Councilmember Gilbert, do you have a motion or discussion?
No, I'm good.
You'd like to defer to the next meeting?
No, I'd like to take the seat. Is this for me or Boyd Hoagman?
You get an appointment, I believe, right?
Oh, I get appointment, may I defer? I'm sorry, sir.
Okay. So both Councilmember Gilbert and Fletcher would like to wait
Do
until
you
the
want to
next
roll,
meeting.
you want to move it to the next meeting?
Could we please?
Thank you.
Moving on to the Historic Preservation Board, Councilmember Matheny.
So I'd like to do the thing, I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off?
No.
I'd like to do the thing we talked about where we move up the alternates. So I see Ms. Tony Jones requested reappointment. I'd like her to stay in there, but I would like to move up alternate 1 and 2 to seat 5 and 7.
Excuse me.
because they both requested, Richard Estel and Carmelo Aquendo both requested reappointment, and right now they're just alternates.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I agree.
That's your motion.
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Matheny. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
And then the alternates, we don't have anybody that this was their first choice, so I don't know if we just leave the alternates vacant, unless you guys have somebody that you want.
Are we able to leave them vacant, or? I'm good with that.
You have two potential candidates. They're not their first choice, but if you could move them to the alternate position. Right? Am I right about that?
Yeah. I personally would like to wait.
I agree.
Because we put a lot of people in these positions that's not their first pick, and the first thing we get is a letter that they say, I'm off of the board. So I think it's maybe easier. You still have 7 board members. That's pretty heavy.
I agree, let's push it.
I agree.
Okay. Moving on to the Planning Commission. We have 2 at-large appointments. Do I have any motions or discussion?
Couldn't we do the same thing and move them up?
Well, the two applicants,
No, it's the dates.
yeah,
Sorry.
the ones that are requesting reappointment are currently in the expiring terms.
I would make a motion to reappoint Don Grisby and Carmelo Aquendo.
Second?
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Moving on to the Recreation Advisory Committee, we have an appointment for Councilmember Gilbert, an appointment for Councilmember Fletcher, and an at-large appointment. 2 at-large appointments. Any discussion or motion from the council?
I'd like to see Rhonda Ducker in C4.
Councilmember Gilbert has made a motion. Do we have a second?
I don't see Rhonda Ducker. Am I on the wrong
Right.
paper?
I don't see her either.
Which one are we at?
Recreation Advisory
I'm so
Committee.
sorry, I jumped ahead of trees. I had a tree meeting yesterday, so I was all about the trees. I apologize. My bad. Would it be possible to meet with them?
Sure, you have the option of reaching out for your appointment to talk to anybody.
I would like to do that. Again, as Councilwoman pointed, if they're just doing it to check off a box, I'd like to see if they're interested in really into this. Recreation is a very big part of St. Cloud, and I'd like to see it.
Do we need a motion for that, or?
No, he
Okay.
just, like the other ones, if we can just move it to the next meeting, give you an opportunity to make,
Councilmember Fletcher, do you have a preference?
Reappointment. Because Bobby Bryant requested a reappointment, right?
yes.
All right, yeah, so motion to,
Second.
there we go.
We have a motion from Councilmember Fletcher and a second from Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Can I go back for a second, Deputy Mayor?
Let's take the motion first, and then we'll go back, okay? Go ahead.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Gilbert, you wanted to go back to?
Yeah, I know Maddie, and she's a great associate. If she's looking to reappoint, I'd like to do that. I'd like to motion for that.
To your seat as seat 4?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I apologize.
right, Councilmember Gilbert has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Matheny. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
And we have the two at-large appointments. Do we have any discussion or motion for those?
Well, they're two alternate positions.
Oh,
They're
okay.
at-large appointments, but they're alternates.
I would make a motion for Christina Jones and Sean Mills for alt 1 and 2, because they're both first choices and they're both city.
I would second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Gilbert. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Now we're at the Tree Advisory Committee.
It was really awesome. It really is. These people are very great people.
Mr. Gilbert, do you have a preference for your
Yes,
nomination?
around the Ducker. Sorry, I was ahead of myself.
Is that a motion?
Motion.
Motion from Councilmember Gilbert. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Councilmember Fletcher, do you have a preference?
Since Rhonda Ducker was just appointed and this is a third choice, I'd like to wait.
Okay. And we have two alternate at-large appointments. Do we have any discussion or motion from the council?
I'll make a motion for alt 1 to be Jarrett Roski, just because I'm concerned about numbers on the Tree Advisory Committee. I know it's his third choice, but hopefully he'll love it.
I do. I really do. Best meetings I've ever been to.
All right, so that was your motion?
Yes.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Zoning Board of Adjustments. We have two at-large appointments. Do we have any discussion or motion from the council?
Well, Megan Marshall requested reappointment, so I would make a motion for her.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Councilmember Matheny?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Do we have any discussion or motion for seat 5?
I say leave it vacant.
It's fine with me. Moving on to, oh, that's it. All right. Madam Clerk, will you please read item number 6 for the record?
Discussion and possible action regarding the ratification of appointee to seat number 5 on the Police and Firefighter Pension Board.
So this is one of the quirky things in the law that you have to deal with. Don't blame me, I didn't write the law. But on the pension board, there are 5 seats. You get to appoint 2, the retirees get to appoint 2, and then the 4 appointed board members pick the 5th one, and it basically comes back to you for a ratification. So it's a perfunctory step to basically say, okay, we agree with the 5th one that you've appointed. And so former Deputy Chief Vinnie Shepherd is the person that they have picked to serve in the 5th seat. And under the law, you have to just basically say yes, and you can't say no. That's the way I read the law.
Really?
Yes, it's sort of a, no.
Councilmember Matheny.
Told you I didn't write it.
Well, Vinny's a great man. I would have supported this anyway, so it's a yes for me.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Yep. All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Matheny and a second from Councilmember Fletcher. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matheny? Aye. Deputy Mayor Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilbert?
Aye.
Councilmember Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, Mr. Manzares, do you have anything for us?
I do not, other than to congratulate you on running a fine meeting for your first time.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Miller, do you have anything for us?
I agree, you've done spectacularly. I have 2 items. First, I received a request from the county asking if I could have the deputy mayor, it would normally be the mayor, but because we have the deputy mayor here this evening, sign a letter. They've made a grant application to the EPA Recycling Education and Outreach Program for a glass recycling project. And so they would like our support on that, if I could get consensus. I see 2.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So we have a letter for you to sign before you go home.
Okay.
And on your seats, and I also emailed them to you, I have the list of projects that staff felt could be state or federal projects. So they're prioritized. I'm told for the federal that we should have a large list, and that our congressman typically will pick the one that he likes the best. So if the council supports these, I just need consensus so that we can move forward.
I'm good with them. I wish Hopkins Park was on it, but I'm good with these.
And just to clarify, the reason it's not, because it was on one draft, our federal lobbyist told me, because we're only at the master plan stage, that she felt it was too preliminary. She said they like to know exactly what they're getting for their money. So it'll be on next year's.
Thank you.
Great. So we have a consensus?
Looks like it. Thank you.
Is that all?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Councilmember Matheny.
I don't really have anything. I would just say I hope everybody goes to the rodeo parade on Saturday and goes to the rodeo that's coming up soon, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher.
I don't have anything. Good job on tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilbert.
I stumbled and fumbled a little bit, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for picking me up. And I did go to Tree Advisory Committee yesterday, a bunch of great folks. We had a Christmas tree turn-in. When you turned in the Christmas trees, there's about 200. They mulched them and used them for all our mulch beds, which saves us money. They also gave a tree away to plant a tree. Now, you think this is silly, but this is good stuff. And I support that committee. And there's 2 members that have been on that committee for over 20 years, and 1 member's been over there for 19 years. Wow. So if any of the council could call them or text them or email our gratitude. I was there for 3.5 hours, and we talked trees, different kinds of trees, and these folks knew about trees. But as we grow, we need trees, so we need to support that committee. So I would just ask each one of you, if you do have a spare moment, to thank them for their service for almost 20 years and 20 years for 2 of the folks. So that's all I got to say. And I'm going back to the next meeting because we got something in common. We love to hug trees. So that's what we do.
I think he just volunteered to go to visit them annually and thank them for this.
Hey, I'll water them. Hey, I'm in.
So you each have to go visit different boards.
Well, we all know which board Councilmember Gilbert's going to be serving on when he's done. That definitely, everybody that serves on our boards, it's very honorable because they dedicate their time to better the city. And I would encourage anyone who wants to make a difference in their city to please apply for these boards. It's very important and very helpful to the city here. So for me, I just wanted to mention that I attended the monthly Toho Board of Advisors meeting, Toho Water Authority Board of Advisors meeting last night, and they gave an update on their water quality management here in St. Cloud. And I believe the director will be coming to the next meeting, is that correct, to give a more in-depth presentation to the city council about some updates on everything that's going on in St. Cloud and the transition. So
Under 5 minutes, I told them.
under 5 minutes.
I said 3 to 5.
Yes. So we look forward to that, and I just would like to thank everybody for bearing with me this evening as I ran my first meeting. I was going to blame Councilmember Gilbert if anything went wrong. So thank you all. This now brings us to our information and reports section. Thursday, February 16th, 2023. I believe that a workshop has been canceled. I
That's
might be
correct,
wrong.
yeah.
That workshop has been canceled, but we do have a city council meeting on February 23rd, 2023, right here in the City Hall chambers. So we hope to see you all there. And the following proclamations have been issued. There's a proclamation in recognition of Black History Month and a proclamation in recognition of CRNA Week. For your review, there is warrant list number 4. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
Great job. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Good job.